The Titan sub was doomed long before its final dive. Stockton Rush, the founder of OceanGate, knew it was structurally unsound. He watched it crack under pressure, and he heard everyone tell him to stop. But he ignored the warnings until Titan's 88th dive, when the sub imploded on him and 4 other passengers. Businessman and adventurer Hamish Harding, Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet, businessman Shahzada Dawood, and his 19-year-old son Suleiman Dawood. Titan sank because, for Rush, turning back had become impossible. Rush founded OceanGate in 2009 with an ambitious and brutally expensive goal: make the deep ocean profitable. He would start by taking paying customers deeper than any civilian submersible in history. At first, the company chartered dives using a small, used submarine called Antipodes, renting it out to researchers and academics. But it could only go 300 meters underwater, and Rush wanted to go at least 4,000 meters deep. But no existing subs could take 5 civilians to the bottom of the ocean. To make the business work, Rush would have to build his own. In 2015, OceanGate revealed its first custom-built submersible called Cyclops 1. This was a proof of concept for Rush's vision for a new kind of sub that could be operated from a cheap support ship instead of an expensive research vessel. Cyclops 1 followed established engineering practices and had a steel hull. It could dive up to 500 meters. But this was 3,500 meters short of Rush's goal, and he quickly discovered that the deeper he wanted to go, the worse the economics became. Deep-sea engineering rewards caution, redundancy, and years of expensive testing. OceanGate could not sustain that kind of development cycle. Scaling back the vision would have meant admitting the business itself might never work, and that was something Rush appeared incapable of doing. By 2016, conventional engineering no longer fit OceanGate's business model, so Rush made a decision that would alter the course of OceanGate and his life forever. He began to see the rules of deep-sea engineering not as limitations, but obstacles to overcome. In 2016, Rush began to build Cyclops 2, later renamed Titan. Rush wanted to reach the Titanic wreck, and to do so would have to solve problems that most engineers avoided altogether. Deep-sea subs are often spherical because that shape distributes the crushing pressure of the ocean evenly in every direction. But spheres are cramped, and Rush wanted room for 5 passengers. So Titan was designed as a long cylinder instead. The shape was more practical for tourism, but far harder to protect from deep ocean pressure. Rush made an equally unconventional choice with the whole material. Most deep diving submersibles use titanium, or steel, because they behave predictably under compression and can survive repeated dives without accumulating dangerous internal weaknesses. Titanium is strong, light, and behaves isotropically, meaning that it responds to pressure the same way in every direction. So why did Rush choose carbon fiber? He considered it innovative because it was lightweight and unlike anything being used in a crewed submersible at those depths. One of the biggest pulls for Rush was that the deeper carbon fiber goes, the more it wants to float upward. This meant he could use low-powered thrusters, a smaller support ship, and a smaller crew for each dive. But it also had a fundamental drawback. Damage accumulates over time. A carbon fiber hull can appear intact until the moment it fails. Rush understood this trade-off, but carbon fiber solved many of OceanGate's time and money problems. None of these decisions automatically doomed Titan. A cylindrical carbon fiber hull can work if it's engineered conservatively, tested rigorously, and its life cycle managed carefully. Rush consulted multiple experts during development. Boeing recommended a hull thickness of 9.3 inches. Rush ignored them and built Titan's hull at about 5 inches. The deeper problem was not the shape or the material. It was Rush's growing belief that established deep-sea engineering was too cautious. Rush came from a different field. As an aerospace engineer, he saw carbon fiber as a symbol of progress, while many veteran submersible designers saw it as a risk. To Rush, Titan was becoming proof that he was right and the experts were wrong. building Titan was only the first hurdle. Rush now faced a harder challenge: to convince everyone else that it was safe. The early testing produced mixed results. The initial pressure test failed, forcing OceanGate to compromise and redesign the end caps to be made of titanium instead of carbon fiber. A later test on a 1/3 scale model successfully survived pressure equivalent to a depth of roughly 4,200 meters. But a scale model is not a crude submersible, and not everyone was willing to let that distinction go unaddressed. In 2018, the Marine Technology Society's Committee on Manned Underwater Vehicles drafted Rush a letter, signed by 38 industry experts, urging him to have Titan classed by an independent certification organization. OceanGate's own marketing claimed Titan would exceed industry standards, but Rush had no intention of inviting that kind of scrutiny, except for one moment in 2019 when he approached Lloyd's register. They refused to class the sub. But credibility was a problem. Online, Rush claimed that the sub was designed and engineered in partnership with NASA, Boeing, and the University of Washington. What he didn't mention was that he consulted all three, but ignored all of their recommendations. The strongest challenge to Rush came from inside OceanGate itself. Director of Marine Operations David Lockridge filed a quality control report warning that the critical non-destructive testing of Titan's carbon fiber hull had never been performed. Without it, there was no reliable way to detect voids, delamination, or other defects that could cause catastrophic failure to the carbon fiber hull. Lockridge also discovered that Titan's viewport, a 15-inch diameter acrylic window, was rated for only a fraction of its intended operating depth, 1,300 meters, rather than 4,000 meters. This fact alone made piloting Titan to the Titanic wreck pure madness in its current state. For Rush, these warnings represented more than engineering disagreements because they threatened the entire company's existence. Lockridge was fired. He filed a whistleblower complaint with OSHA and was met with a lawsuit from OceanGate, who claimed Lockridge improperly shared trade secrets. OceanGate then lied about the reason he was fired. Once again, Rush crushed a legitimate warning to continue development. Rush's answer to all of these concerns was bewildering. As a substitute for testing and certification, Rush patented a real-time monitoring system, also known as RTM. He claimed that this system could listen for damage occurring inside the carbon fiber hull in real time and provide advanced warnings before implosion. To him, Titan did not need the same level of testing and certification as conventional submersibles. The vessel could monitor itself. In reality, many experts believed any warnings would come only seconds or milliseconds before implosion. But then came the moment that changed everything. On December 10th, 2018, Rush locked himself into the Titan, as it was only able to open from the outside. He personally piloted the sub to roughly 4,000 meters and returned safely. That successful dive was the most consequential event in Titan's history, because it appeared to validate years of Rush's controversial decisions. Every warning that had come before now had to compete with a simple fact: Titan succeeded. Turning back was becoming harder than ever. By April of 2019, the dangers of Titan were no longer hypothetical. That month, the vessel descended 3,760 meters with a crew of 4. The dive was a success, except for the reported cracking and banging noises heard by passenger and engineer Carl Stanley. The original carbon fiber hull was showing signs of cyclic fatigue, meaning that damaged carbon fiber accumulates over repeated dives was beginning to appear. Stanley told Rush, "I think that hull has a defect near that flange that will only get worse." After more testing, OceanGate reduced Titan's maximum operating depth from 4,000 meters to 3,000. This was a remarkable admission. The submersible could no longer safely reach its end goal, the Titanic. This should have been a moment of reckoning. After years of warnings, testing disputes, and engineering controversies, Titan's most important component appeared to be failing exactly as critics feared. But Rush doubled down. In early 2021, OceanGate commissioned a replacement carbon fiber hull from Electro Impact and Unitsky Industries. But rather than rebuild the vessel from scratch, Rush made one of his most reckless decisions yet. He instructed engineers to reuse components from the original sub. Rush also added external lifting rings despite objections from his own engineers, who warned the sub had not been designed to handle those loads. By this point, the pattern was becoming difficult to ignore. Every major setback created another opportunity to reconsider the project. Instead, each problem seemed to strengthen Rush's commitment to it. The Titan had effectively failed its mission, yet rather than abandon the design, Rush put the pieces back together and pushed forward. Titan was headed to the Titanic. In 2021, Titan began taking paying customers to the Titanic wreck. Rush organized 10 expeditions over the next 2 years, each carefully framed to avoid the rules governing commercial passenger operations. Clients were called mission specialists. The dives were labeled research. The expeditions themselves were a catalog of warnings. The sub often lost contact with the surface for hours during descent. Even worse, on multiple dives, Titan never reached Titanic at all. Titan's sonar could only see about 100 yards ahead, where 400 to 500 was standard. Another corner cut for cost. Then came a more serious warning. On one dive, the sub became stuck on the sea floor for 4 hours. Titan's passengers were sealed inside at a depth where rescue was impossible. The mission ended without disaster, after about 20 hours total submerged, but it also ended without Rush changing course. Each time the sub surfaced, Rush called it a success. He had no other option. After years of testing, of proving his critics wrong, walking away from the carbon fiber hull meant admitting the experts had been right the whole time. At 61, he could not start over. And without the carbon fiber, there was no OceanGate. He insisted that the classification systems were restrictive, that they slowed innovation and added cost without real safety benefit. In practice, that left only one thing testing the hull: the dives. On dive 80, the Titan failed that test. Everyone on board heard a loud bang. That sound could only come from the carbon fiber layers beginning to separate. On June 18, 2023, Titan began its 88th descent. Rush and the sub's passengers, Harding, Nargeolet, Dawood, and his son, traveled to the wreck site on a ship called Polar Prince. This ship was smaller than usual, so the entire way to the site, the sub was towed behind the vessel, instead of riding on deck. Being dragged through open ocean like that almost certainly stressed the hull. The dive continued regardless. At 8:55 a.m., Titan slipped beneath the surface and began the 2-hour journey to the Titanic. Every 5 to 10 seconds, Titan sent a positioning ping to the support ship. Nothing appeared unusual. Rush had made this trip dozens of times. About an hour and a half into the journey, people on the Polar Prince heard an alarming bang sound. No distress call followed. However, moments afterward, at 10:47 a.m., Polar Prince received a delayed message from the sub, dropped 2 weights. The Titan was 3,346 meters underwater. This was the last text message they ever received. The message suggests something haunting. After years of insisting his real-time monitoring system could detect damage before a catastrophic failure, it appears Rush may have received exactly the warning he prepared for. It's likely that Rush recognized something was wrong and attempted to ascend, but in milliseconds, the North Atlantic collapsed inward with thousands of pounds of pressure on every square inch of the vessel. The carbon fiber hull failed exactly as critics had feared it might, suddenly and catastrophically. All 5 passengers lost their lives instantly. 4 days later, search teams located the wreckage approximately 500 meters from the bow of the Titanic. Rush had finally tried to turn back, but he was many years too late.